Okay, for the story of the week, we're going to be looking at the book called The House That Jane Built. So before we listen to the story, let's look at what a flashback means. We've done flashbacks before. What does that mean? Evangeline?
It means when you remember it again.
You remember it again. A lot of the times in movies, a character may be talking about a memory they had, and then they'll have a flashback to that memory of maybe when they were a kid. Okay? So flashback is going back in time, okay, and remembering something from the past. Okay? So as we listen to this story on YouTube, I want you guys to be paying attention to these questions. Okay? Where does the story start? What do we know? Okay? So pay attention to the beginning and where it's starting. Next, we need to look at what time do we flash back to. Okay? What do we learn? Meaning, what is the purpose of the flashback? To teach us what? Okay? Third, what does Jane end up doing? Does her past help shape her present? Okay? So now I'm going to pull up the story, The House That Jane Built.
Welcome to Storyline Online, brought to you by the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. I'm Kiernan Shipka, and today I'm going to be reading you The House That Jane Built, written by Tanya Lee Stone and illustrated by Catherine Brown. I'm very excited to be reading this to you all. A house stands on a busy street. Its doors are opened wide. To all who come, it bids good cheer. To some, it says, abide. In 1889, a wealthy young woman named Jane Addams moved into a lovely, elegant house in Chicago, Illinois. But instead of moving into a lovely, elegant neighborhood, she picked a house that was smack in the middle of one of the filthiest, poorest parts of town. Why would a wealthy young woman do this when she could have lived anywhere? Jane was just 6 years old when she went on a trip with her father and noticed that not everyone lived like her family did. She vowed that one day she would live right in the midst of poor little houses and find a way to fix the world. Jane was a strong soul from the start, and she was brave. When she and her stepbrother George were young, they would sneak away at night to explore the nearby caves. Once, Jane lowered George over a cliff on a rope to spy on an owl and its nest. Jane was smart. She read and read from her father's book collection, which doubled as the town library. Most girls did not go to college then, but Jane's father believed women should be educated. She went to Rockford Female Seminary and graduated at the top of her class. But when school was over, she wasn't sure what to do with her life. That same summer, her father died. Jane was lost. About 2 years later, she and her friends traveled to Europe.
They went to the theater, the opera, and many beautiful places. But then Jane saw something in London she couldn't forget. People in ragged clothes with outstretched hands, begging a cart vendor to buy his leftover rotten fruits and vegetables that hadn't sold at the market. The spoiled food was all they could afford. What could she do to help? Long after her trip was over, the question stuck in her mind. She remembered how she felt when she was 6. Jane traveled back to London to learn about a place she had heard was helping the poor in a brand new way. At Toynbee Hall, the idea was to have rich and poor people live together in the same community and learn from each other. Instead of simply serving soup, for example, people could take cooking classes. Other skills were taught as well. Toynbee Hall was the first settlement house. It was called a settlement house because the well-off people who worked there during the day didn't go back to their own homes at night. Instead, they settled in and lived at Toynbee Hall, right in the same neighborhood as the needy. Jane now knew what to do. She told her friend Ellen Gates Starr about her plan to build a settlement house in Chicago. It was as if a racehorse had burst out of the gate, free at last to pour every ounce of energy into running. There was a glittery side to Chicago, with its mansions, fancy shops, and sparkling lakefront. But there was a gritty side, too. 1 million people lived in Chicago in 1889. Most were immigrants, people who came from other countries. They came for a better life, but they didn't speak English. That made it hard to find good jobs. Many needed help. Jane found the perfect house. It had big rooms with high ceilings and marble fireplaces, and it was in one of the worst neighborhoods in the city. Garbage lay rotting in the streets, piled high. Large families were crammed into tiny, ramshackle houses with no running water. The smell from backlot outhouses hung in the air. Rough boys ran the streets, stirring up trouble because they had nothing to do. The house had belonged to Charles J. Hull, and he had left it to a wealthy cousin named Helen Culver. At first, Jane paid rent, but after she told Helen what she had in mind, Helen gave her the house for free. In thanks, Jane named it Hull House. Jane moved in on September 18th, 1889. The very first night, she was so busy and excited that she forgot to lock a side door before going to sleep. But no one broke in. She decided to leave Hull House unlocked from then on so people would know they could come in at any time. People who didn't have enough to eat or had no shoes on their feet or had just lost a job began to find their way to Hull House. Of course, it wasn't always peaceful. Once a couple of boys threw rocks at the house and broke a window. Instead of getting upset, Jane took it as a sign to give the neighborhood kids something to do. She had her own way of looking at things. Another time, Jane discovered a man in the house looking for something to steal. He tried to jump out a window to escape, but she showed him the door so he wouldn't get hurt. When he broke in a second time, she asked him why. He said he was out of work and he had no money. Jane told him to report back the next morning. When he did, she gave him a job. Jane spent her own money running Hull House and asked other well-off people to donate too. She did not want to be paid for working there. Even when people gave her gifts, she gave them away. Her friends teased Jane about this. One friend gave her new underwear with her initials just so Jane couldn't pass them on. But she did. Any problem Jane discovered, she tackled. No running water in the house meant no easy way to bathe. This led to sickness, so Jane put in a public bath. People flocked to it, which helped her convince city officials they needed to build more public baths. No safe place for children to play? Jane talked a wealthy man into giving her the lot he owned near Hull House. Workmen tore down the shabby buildings and turned the lot into a playground. It was the first one in Chicago. Little kids home alone because their parents had to work 14 hours a day? Jane started a morning kindergarten and after-school clubs. She also set up afternoon classes for older kids who had to go to work during the school day. Jane did not do all this alone. Ellen Gates Starr was her partner from the start. Many other smart, generous people moved into Hull House and helped. They taught literature, art, English, math, science, and cooking. Soon there was not just one building, but two, then 3 and 4 and more. By 1907, Hull House had grown into 13 buildings, including a gymnasium, coffee house, theater, music school, community kitchen, and an art gallery. By the early 1920s, more than 9,000 people a week visited Hull House. The house that Jane built brought all kinds of people together and helped those in need. It changed a bad neighborhood into a great and strong community. Hull House transformed the lives of all who stepped inside. Today, every community center in America, in large part, has Jane Addams to thank. With all that she did, both inside and outside the house that Jane built, her childhood wish to help fix the world came true. And the cool part about this story, which I love so much, is that it's true. Reading is so magical for so many reasons. It can bring you to amazing, magical places that are beyond your wildest dreams, but it can also give you amazing, valuable, inspiring information like this, and I'm so happy this book exists and that I got to learn a little bit more about Jane today because she makes me want to be a better person. Thank you for watching Storyline Online. Make sure to check out all our other videos. Keep watching and keep reading.
Okay, so back to our flashback. So let's talk about this together. So a flashback is what an author does to help keep our attention and to probably give us some important information about the character, okay? So let's think back to where the book started. Where did the story start? Now remember, it was a woman opening up her home to who?
Homeless people.
To people in need, yeah. So the story starts with a woman opening up her home to people in need. Okay? So it also asks, what do we know? Was her home in the rich part of town? Was it in the filthy, poor part of town? Evangeline? Okay, good. So it starts with a woman opening up her home to people in need. In a poor part of town. Who is the woman? What's her name? Jane. Jane Addams. Was this a true story?
Yes.
Yes. So what do we call it if it's true?
Non-fiction.
Nonfiction. Okay, so it starts with her as an adult, right? She's an adult woman standing on her front porch. It shows a picture of her opening up her doors to these people that need a place to stay. Then we get into the flashback. What time does it flash back to? David?
Whenever she was a little kid riding on the carriage with her dad.
Good. She flashed back to her childhood, right? When she was 6 years old. So we flash back to Jane's childhood. She was 6 years old. Can y'all see that? Okay, so now we know when we flash back to, but what do we learn? What was the purpose of the flashback? David?
To remember that she saw people that were poor.
Yes.
Didn't live how she lived.
That a lot of people didn't live how she lived. Okay. Did it also show us something about Jane, her personality?
Yeah.
What was she like? Her and her brother were what? They were brave, yeah. To show us she was brave. What else? Her dad made sure that she did what? When not a lot of people were doing it, not a lot of girls were doing this, she had to do what?
Right? Go to school.
Go to school. So it showed us she was brave. It showed us she was smart.
Is he dead?
Very smart. And educated. Okay, so even in the beginning, it also showed she liked helping others. What was her goal? Her goal was to do what? Help others, make the world a better place, right? Oh, that's sweet, Bryson. Yeah, well, you don't have to just be a doctor to make the world a better place, right? Lots of people make the world a better place, not just through their jobs, but by volunteering their time to help others, okay?
And giving away other new shows to others.
Yes, giving away things to others. Okay, so the last one says, what does Jane end up doing? Does her past help shape her present? Okay, what does Jane end up doing? She ends up opening what? She ends up opening homes.
And she made a pool.
Homes for the needy. But did the needy just go there and stay, or did they also learn important skills?
They learned important skills, important stuff how to stay alive.
Yes, she ends up opening these homes for the needy that also teach them skills. Okay, because they didn't want, I'm sure Jane was thinking too, she didn't want people to just depend on her and the people that worked at the home. They taught them skills, that way when they go out after leaving that home, they're prepared and they don't have to rely on other people. They can go out and get a job or have things that they know how to do to provide for themselves. Okay, so did her past help shape her present? Yes. How? Who can tell me how? What about her past helped her with her present? Lots of things, right? David, you can remember something?
It helped her remember.
Her past helped her remember. Good. How those people felt, probably. The needy. What else? Who is the family member that played the big role in her life?
Dad.
Her dad. Why was her dad important? He taught her to do what?
Help.
To help people. Bryson, what did you say? Her dad taught her to help people?
No. I said taught her how to live by herself.
Taught her to live by herself. Okay.
Taught her how to be kind to others.
To be kind to others. You taught her to learn and be educated, right? Very good. Okay. So her past did help shape her present in several ways. We'll just say with all the skills she learned as a child. The ones we just said. From her dad. Her dad taught her to be kind. He taught her to be brave. He taught her to be educated and to not rely on other people. To be smart. If you're smart, then you can think for yourself and have ideas of how to get yourself out of bad situations, how to help others. Okay? Now, once you get that written down, we're going to talk about the vocabulary words for the week. Okay? Okay, so these are your words for this week. We're going to go over them and read them together, and then we're going to maybe practice saying a sentence that goes with each word. The first one is elegant. So everybody say the word with me. Elegant. So that means fine or rich in quality. The woman wore a very elegant dress to the banquet, okay, or to the ball. So elegant means fine or rich in quality. Vowed. Everybody say that word. Vowed. To promise or pledge in a serious way. Can somebody use that in a sentence? Kelsey?
I vowed to not. I vowed to not. I vowed to not tell lies.
Very good. I vowed to not tell lies. Number 3. Tackled. Everybody say it.
Tackled.
Okay? To try to master or solve. This isn't tackled like in a football game. This is tackle like I'm going to tackle that spelling list, meaning I'm going to master or solve it. Okay? We need to tackle this STAR test next month. Okay? I'm going to master and solve it. It means it in that way, not like physically tackle a person. Okay? The next one, generous. So let's say that word.
Generous.
Generous. Good. Willing to give or share. You're not selfish. You're giving and sharing. Okay? Who wants to try to use that in a sentence? Generous. Allie?
My whole family is generous for helping people on the road.
On the road? Okay. She said, my whole family is generous because they help people on the road. Okay? The woman was generous when she opened up her home to people in need. Okay? Transform. Everybody say that word.
Transform.
To change the nature, character, use, or condition of. Transform. Okay? David?
Like transform a car.
Good. Like the movie?
Yeah, like
The-
Transformers.
The robot can transform into a car. Good. Peaceful. Calm, free from conflict. Kelsey?
The girl was peaceful when she was meditating.
Good. The girl was peaceful when she was meditating. Very good. Okay, the next word is ramshackle. So, like 2 words put together. Ramshackle. Poorly constructed or in despair. The ramshackle house was falling apart. Okay? So, think of a house or a shack that's barely holding together. Okay? Outhouse. We don't have these anymore, but back in the olden days, they had outhouses. So an outhouse is a small shed used for an outdoor toilet. So the outdoor toilet was not part of your house. It was called an outhouse. Okay? Kind of like a porta potty. Exactly. It's in a little shed that kind of looks like a house. It wasn't bright blue or green like you see the porta potties. It just looked like a little shed. Okay? Flocked. To gather or come in large groups. The crowd flocked to the ice cream truck when they heard the music. Okay, flocked. And the last one, community. So everybody say that word.
Community.
A particular area where a group of people live. Okay? All right, Kelsey, you want to share your sentence?
I live in a peaceful sweet community.
Okay, very good. I live in a peaceful, sweet community. We live in the community of New Waverly. So community, that shouldn't be anything that's new, okay? So for your vocabulary this week, normally we focus on the first 6. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that you need to know how to put in sentences, fill in the blank. And then the last ones you have to know how to write your own sentence about, okay? So make sure you're studying these throughout the week, and we will be working on them in class as well, okay?